Just when high school students were fighting for their ideals, China secretly made a big news. At noon on June 7, 2023, my country's LIJIAN-1 solid-fuel rocket was launched for the second time at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, successfully achieving 26 satellites in one rocket, and will test the 24th star. The 24th test 26 satellites such as No. B satellite were successfully sent into the predetermined orbit. Before this, China's rocket launch was at most 22 stars per arrow. And it had to be done with liquid fuel rockets that were easier to operate. Of course, when it comes to this, some people will definitely stand up and refute, saying that now in the world, the technology of multiple stars in one arrow is already very common, and China's 26 stars in one arrow cannot be ranked at all. For example, before China, there was Russia's 38 stars for one arrow, 53 stars for one arrow in Europe. Even ranking first and second are India's 104 stars and the United States' 143 stars. China's 26 stars in one arrow can't be ranked no matter how you look at it. Not to mention that the 104 satellites launched by the Indians have a huge amount of water. The weight of the satellites is only 1 kilogram. And most of the satellites have no navigation system or even functions. The metaphor is like spreading potatoes in space, or taking out garbage in space. At least the 143 satellites in the United States are practical and commercial satellites. Having said that, I have to mention the difference between China's Lijian-1 and the American Falcon rocket. SpaceX rocket LIJIAN-1 is currently the largest practical solid-fuel rocket in my country. This rocket has two huge advantages and one pretty huge disadvantage. Let's talk about the advantages first. The biggest advantage of solid-fuel rockets is that the launch preparation time is short. In an emergency, it can even be ready for takeoff in less than half an hour. This is mainly due to the advantages of solid fuel itself. Liquid fuel rockets need to be filled with fuel before launching. This time often ranges from a few days to a few weeks. Unlike solid fuel rockets, their fuel is in the construction process. It is placed in the rocket in advance, so there is no need to refill the fuel when launching, just make other preparations. In other words, in terms of use efficiency, my country's Lijian #1 is still very high. The second advantage is large thrust, fast speed, and large potential load. This is also the advantage of solid fuel rockets, that is to say, as long as the technology is in place, solid fuel rockets can eventually be bigger than liquid fuel rockets. More satellites can be installed in the future. Arrow 1, of course, in addition to these two huge advantages, there is also a rather huge disadvantage, that is, the operability of solid fuel rockets is very poor. Generally speaking, it is difficult for solid fuel rockets to slow down and change direction. It is flexible enough to fly around in several different satellite orbits to implement the deployment of multiple satellites. This is why foreigners, especially the United States, have always disliked the use of solid fuel rockets to deploy satellites. However, this is precisely the unique point of LIJIAN-1, that is, it overcomes the problem of poor maneuverability of solid-fuel rockets. Relatively speaking, although the current Falcon rocket surpasses China in terms of load capacity and technology, the potential and upper limit of this technology is just like this, and China's LIJIAN-1 still has the potential to continue to develop. In the future, our country can even use solid fuel rockets to conduct multiple launches in a short period of time. The reason why China now needs this kind of rocket capable of multiple stars with one arrow is mainly because of my country's GW Large Constellation plan. In order to counter the US Starlink, my country has applied to the ITU for the GW Large Constellation. In the next 12 years, my country needs to send 12,990 satellites into space, and at the same time, within 5 years, my country must send more than 4,000 satellites to predetermined orbits, otherwise the ITU will cancel China's application for satellite orbit qualifications. Some people were worried before whether China would be able to achieve this goal within 5 years, but Arrow 1 proved that most of these concerns were unnecessary. And China could completely deploy and complete its own Chinese version of Starlink within the specified time. The Chinese version of Starlink is coming at the same time. This rocket has wider application prospects in the future, such as transporting a large amount of materials into the orbit of the space station, or even the orbit of the Moon, assisting in the construction of a Moon base, and realizing the round trip between the Earth and the Moon, etc. A base for 3D printing rockets can be built on the Moon. A solid fuel rocket launch pad and a production factory can be built directly on the Moon, and rockets can be launched from the Moon, whether it is going to Mars or the Earth. They can come and go freely. Liquid fuel rockets are not so convenient. Just filling the rocket with fuel in a weightless environment is enough to cause headaches. What others saw in this rocket launch was that China's technology is still catching up with the United States. I can see that the potential of China's technology has surpassed that of the United States. As long as we are given enough time to turn our potential into strength, China Aerospace will naturally stand on top of the world.